Guys, you need to get the neck brace ready. The new Slipknot record's out. Hey review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video, and in this one I'm going to be covering the new Slipknot record entitled We Are Not Your Kind. So Slipknot, the Des Moines, Iowa band formed in 1995, are by far one of the most recognizable heavy metal bands of the past few decades. Known for their unique take on genres such as nu metal and alternative metal tinged with this very borderline extreme metal feel, they're also known distinctly for their onstage costumes, their masks, their personas. Slipknot is very distinctive on all fronts, from an imagery front to a scope front to a sound front. They've come a long way throughout their entire career. Their first studio-length album, their self-titled studio-length album, is held as not only one of the heaviest but one of the greatest nu metal releases and alternative metal releases of all time, boasting such great singles as Spit It Out and of course Wait and Bleed. Then you got Iowa, personally my favorite Slipknot record, which somehow is just a scorching build-up from their first record. They somehow took the scorching intensity from the first record and upped the intensity. I wholeheartedly believe they just used the brutality of their first record as a stepping stone to this point. And then the Subliminal Verses was a band that was kind of going into more of an alternative metal direction and utilizing that section of their sound a little bit more. I would say even though they were still being very heavy, they were finding ways not just to be balls to the wall heavy, but also dynamic. I feel like All Hope Is Gone featured some of my favorite lyricism on any Slipknot record, even though if instrumentally and boundary pushing wise it wasn't necessarily their strongest record. And then their previous record, their most recent record, Point 5, The Gray Chapter, is probably their heaviest record since their debut release. Even though it wasn't doing anything super boundary pushing, it really felt like a fresh take on something they had done so long ago. This is the first Slipknot record to not feature Chris Fain after his firing from the band, but to be fair, Slipknot's entire career has always been littered with tumultuous band member changes and brief, sometimes lengthy hiatuses, and the somehow insane ability to get darker and dingier and grittier on each release. We Are Not Your Kind, in my opinion, can be considered one of the band's heaviest releases to date, and not just from an instrumental standpoint, but also a lyrical standpoint. This is a dark record. It's 14 tracks, a little bit over an hour's worth of material, and it takes everything Slipknot's been known for, but finds interesting ways to push their sound in new directions, without really letting go of where they came from or losing that original flair. Sean, aka Clown's custom percussion is as flames as ever, and I also stand by this band having one of the best snares in the game. The guitars are as just gritty and alt metal and chuggy as ever, and when the samples and keyboards come in, they add nice compositional spice. Everything always just has this full capacity threshold, feeling like it's about to bust a vein. Corey Taylor as a vocalist has only improved, and I genuinely mean that. Surprisingly, he has just been able to refine his sound. He is sounding like a well-aged wine. Tracks like Unsainted and Solway Firth have been talked to death. I didn't cover them in a track review or anything, but I can still say I'm adamant that they are two of the best tracks Slipknot has ever written, and Solway Firth is probably my favorite Slipknot track ever. It's just so heavy. It's so heavy even by Slipknot standards. One of the heaviest tracks they've ever written, and it really showcases that they can sometimes extremely blur the line of that extreme metal label. And surprisingly, with the long length of the record, some of the deep cuts can hit pretty hard too, which is something that I have sometimes had a little bit of an issue with Slipknot, where the middle part can occasionally drag just a tiny bit. Not necessarily in a talent type of way, but more so an instrumental and a compositional type of way, where it felt like they were wearing a little bit thin on what they were wanting to do on the record. Critical Darling's one of the prettiest songs Slipknot's ever written, if you can even use the words pretty and Slipknot in the same sentence. It's a little bit more low-key, featuring breakups in the instrumental, as well as backed by some very heartfelt lyricism by Corey, although I do wish his vocals would have been mixed a little bit higher, because I think this instrumental in particular can drown him out a little bit, and his vocals can feel a little bit dry by the album standards. A Liar's Funeral, on the other hand, has some of the best mixing on the record. This track gives off the vibe quicker than so many tracks I've heard in general recently. It starts off macabre, and it just hits you immediately. You feel that. Corey's vocals move like silk and crack occasionally, but they still are tinged with this coarseness to it, and as the track progresses, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and Corey just goes into straight up growl territory that is very groove metal inspired, which is something not too unlike most of what they've done in the past. It's definitely contemporary and olden groove metal inspired, you can tell. My Pain is like a demented fun house with twinkling synths hanging in the background and a very eerie, creepy, ominous vocal performance by Corey Taylor. He has this way of just coming off as a madman. I will say though, for the length being almost 7 minutes long, nearly 7 minutes long, I believe it clocks in at 6 minutes 48 seconds, it can get a tad mundane as it progresses near the latter half, but the abstract nature of it with the instrumental kept my attention for the most part. Pretty much the same thing with the track Spiders. It features these ascending and descending Haunted Mansion-esque pianos, chuggy, very groovy guitars that get the job done, as well as some claps that carry on in the track, which I think were pretty cool, very new metal. To be honest, most people know a lot about Slipknot by now, and while I could sit here and dissect the tracks, this is a fairly standard release by the band. I don't think there's much here that is so just insanely different that it's going to cause people to either like really love it or really hate it more or less than they ever did. Slipknot is as mosh your fucking head as ever. They are so brutal, they're so heavy. The lyricism is about betrayal, it's about depression, it's about hatred, it's about misanthropy, it's about bitterness towards society, it's about hatred towards society, it's about just everything that is negative. Slipknot bottles it up in this extremely heavy groove metal, heavy metal, new metal way, and just hits you with these towering tracks that never let up on the aggression. This record is relentless, it's chaotic, it's scorching, it sears your skin to the bone with how blistering it can be at times. This record is not Slipknot's best record in my opinion, but it's definitely up there, and if you like Slipknot, definitely check this record out because you're going to like it, and if you've been living under a rock and have never heard Slipknot before, I highly suggest you check this record out because I think it's very much worth your time. Even if it's not super boundary pushing by the band standards, you can never really go wrong with Slipknot. I'm going to be giving this record a 7.5 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Please stay for the end screen. I'll link some videos that you might be interested in. Have you heard this new Slipknot record, We Are Not Your Kind? If you have, you can let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts of the record was. I would love to discuss it with you. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new here. It'll help me out a lot. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. My name is Jay Morse, the Review Guy. You know who it is, and I'm signing off saying farewell.